Traditional Scottish brewing produced incredible ales with depth and character, but Tennent's helped establish Scotland's unfortunate reputation as a lager drinking nation. At £3 to £4 per pint in Scottish pubs, drinkers are paying for marketing heritage rather than brewing quality, and Scotland's excellent craft breweries now prove that proper beer made with 100% malt and traditional methods is infinitely superior. Right, listen to this. That pint of lager you're drinking down the pub might contain corn syrup, rice and artificial foam stabilisers, but not a drop of proper barley malt. Today we're exposing 15 beers that aren't actually 100% beer, and I'll tell you what, some of these are sitting in your fridge right now. Your guilty favourites. From mass market lagers to so-called premium imports, these brews are cutting corners you need to know about. Carling Foam. Chemical crutch exposed. Let's start with Britain's best-selling lager, and here's the uncomfortable truth. Carling contains up to 30% unmalted cereals, primarily maize and rice, which are significantly cheaper than proper barley malt. The 4.0% ABV comes from a fermentation process that uses enzymes to break down these adjunct grains, resulting in that characteristically thin, watery body that British drinkers have somehow accepted as normal. What makes this particularly dodgy is the foam stabiliser they add, a protein extract that creates that artificial-looking head, which disappears within minutes. Traditional cask ales maintain their head naturally through proper brewing and conditioning, but Carling needs chemical assistance. The company argues these adjuncts create a lighter, more refreshing taste, but what they really create is a cheaper production cost while maintaining the same retail price you're paying at the bar. UK Foster's watered down fake. Here's one that'll surprise you. This Australian beer hasn't been brewed in Australia for the UK market since 2011. Foster's, sold in Britain, contains up to 40% unmalted grains, predominantly maize, which gives it that distinctively bland, almost sweet character that masks the lack of proper malt flavour. The 4.0% ABV is achieved through high-gravity brewing, where they make a stronger beer, then water it down to the desired strength, a process that saves money but destroys flavour complexity and body. What's particularly concerning is the use of propylene glycol alginate as a foam stabiliser, the same substance used in some industrial applications and salad dressings. Real beer doesn't need these additives because proper ingredients and traditional brewing methods create natural head retention. During their 1980s marketing push, Foster's convinced British drinkers this was authentic Australian beer culture, but Australians themselves rarely drink it, preferring their own craft breweries and proper lagers. ABV cut, price hiked. Stella scam? Right, here's the premium lager that's fooled British drinkers for decades. Stella contains approximately 25% unmalted maize, which they've used since the 1970s to reduce production costs, while maintaining that premium price point of £5 to £6 per pint in most pubs. The famous, reassuringly expensive slogan from the 1980s was brilliant marketing, convincing Britons to pay more for what's essentially an adjunct lager with clever branding. The 4.6% ABV used to be 5.2% until they reduced it in 2020. But they didn't reduce the price accordingly, did they? What's particularly misleading is the chalice-shaped glass they serve it in, designed to make you think you're drinking something special and continental. The glass shape actually has nothing to do with flavour enhancement. It's pure theatre to justify the premium pricing. Traditional Belgian brewing would never use maize adjuncts in this proportion, but Stella's British production has been optimised for profit margins rather than authenticity since AB InBev took full control. Rice rules Bud's bland empire? Now here's the American import that's about as far from traditional beer as you can get. Budweiser contains up to 40% rice as an adjunct, which creates that famously bland, almost flavourless profile that American brewing became known for in the mid-20th century. The rice is cheaper than barley malt and creates a lighter body, but it fundamentally changes what beer should be, turning it into little more than fizzy, alcoholic water with a grain base. They also use beechwood chips during aging, not for flavour as their marketing suggests, but to provide surface area for yeast to settle, speeding up production time and reducing costs. What's particularly cynical is how they've marketed this as the king of beers, when it's essentially the opposite of what beer royalty should represent. Traditional brewing takes time, uses only barley malt, hops, yeast and water, and doesn't need gimmicks. The fact that Budweiser has become one of the world's best-selling beers says more about marketing budgets than brewing quality. And British drinkers deserve to know they're paying £4 to £5 per pint for what's essentially industrial brewing at its most cost-effective. Foam polymer in sophisticated pint. Here's the French lager that British drinkers think is sophisticated. Kronenbourg contains approximately 30% maize adjuncts, significantly reducing the malt character that proper lager should have and creating that slightly sweet, uncomplicated flavour profile. The 5.0% ABV is achieved through fermentation of these mixed grains, resulting in a beer that lacks the complexity and depth of true continental lagers. What makes this particularly misleading is the heavy marketing around its French origins and supposed premium quality, when in reality it's been owned by Carlsberg since 2008 and brewed in Britain using the same cost-cutting methods as other mass-market lagers. They also use a foam stabiliser called PVPP, polyvinyl polypyrrolidone, a synthetic polymer that keeps the head looking presentable but adds nothing to flavour or quality. The fancy blue bottle and French name convince British pubgoers to pay premium prices, but you're essentially drinking a standard adjunct lager with continental branding. Traditional French brewing, particularly in the Alsace region, would use 100% barley malt and traditional lagering methods lasting several weeks, but Kronenbourg's British production is optimised for volume and profit rather than authenticity. Iconic bottle betrays tradition? Brilliant bit of Dutch marketing here, but the reality is quite different. Heineken, brewed for the British market, contains approximately 20% maize starch, which they've been using since the 1960s to create that characteristic pale colour and light body that's nothing like traditional Dutch brewing. The 5.0% ABV comes from a rapid fermentation process using their proprietary A yeast strain, which was selected not for flavour complexity, but for speed and consistency across their global production facilities. What's particularly concerning is the use of hop extracts rather than whole hops, meaning you're getting standardised bitterness without the aromatic complexity that real hops provide. They also add EDTA, ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, as a preservative and stabiliser, extending shelf life but adding chemical compounds that have no place in traditional beer. The green bottle has become iconic, but it actually allows light to penetrate and create skunked flavours, which is why many brewers use brown bottles. Heineken's global marketing budget is enormous, convincing British drinkers this is premium Dutch brewing, but actual Dutch craft breweries produce beers with far more character and authenticity using 100% malt and traditional methods. Right folks, if this is making you rethink what's in your glass, do us a favour and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this list. Your beer guilty? Comment below. Now let's crack on with number 9, and this one's going to shock you. Proper lagering. Carlsberg skips. Here's the Danish lager that's fooled British drinkers since the 1970s. Carlsberg Export contains up to 35% unmalted cereals, primarily maize and rice, creating that distinctively thin, almost watery mouthfeel that's become accepted as normal for British lager drinkers. The 4.8% ABV is achieved through industrial-scale fermentation that takes just 7 to 10 days, compared to the 4 to 6 weeks that traditional lagering requires for proper flavour development. What makes this particularly dodgy is their use of foam heading agents derived from propylene glycol, creating that artificial-looking white head that collapses within minutes because there's insufficient protein from actual malt to sustain it naturally. They've also reformulated it several times over the decades, always reducing quality to cut costs while maintaining the premium pricing that British pubs charge. The export designation suggests something special, but it's actually just marketing terminology with no legal definition. Traditional Danish brewing, as practiced by smaller Danish breweries, uses 100% barley malt and proper lagering time, creating beers with actual character and depth. What you're drinking with Carlsberg Export is industrial efficiency, masquerading as brewing tradition, and at £4 to £5 per pint, you deserve better. Blue Mountain's Mask Bland Coors. Here's the American import that redefined how little flavour beer could have. Coors Light contains approximately 40% maize and rice adjuncts, creating what's essentially alcoholic flavoured water with minimal resemblance to traditional beer. The 4.0% ABV is achieved through their cold filtered process, which sounds technical and premium, but is really just marketing speak for removing what little flavour the beer had to begin with. What's particularly cynical is how they've marketed the mountains turn blue temperature indicator on the can, suggesting there's an optimal temperature for drinking this beer, when in reality the colder you serve it, the less you taste how bland it actually is. They also use a foam stabiliser called Tetra hop extract, which isn't real hop flavour, but rather a processed extract designed purely for foam retention. The light designation refers to calories rather than alcohol content, appealing to health-conscious drinkers who'd be better served drinking less of a proper beer rather than more of this industrial product. British craft breweries produce session beers with similar alcohol levels but infinitely more character, using 100% malt and real hops, proving you don't need adjuncts to create a lighter drinking experience. Spanish name, British Industrial. Now here's the Spanish lager that's absolutely everywhere in British pubs. San Miguel, brewed for the UK market, contains approximately 30% maize and rice adjuncts, significantly different from the original Filipino recipe that started the brand in 1890. The 5.0% ABV comes from a fermentation process optimized for speed and cost effectiveness rather than flavour development, taking just 10 days compared to the month-long lagering traditional brewing requires. What makes this particularly misleading is the heavy marketing around its supposed Spanish heritage and premium quality, when the version sold in Britain is actually brewed in Northampton using industrial methods and adjunct grains. They've convinced British drinkers this is authentic Mediterranean brewing, charging £5 to £6 per pint in most establishments, but you're paying premium prices for a standard adjunct lager. The brand has changed ownership multiple times, currently under Mahou San Miguel, and each ownership transition has seen further cost optimization and quality reduction. During the 1990s pub boom, San Miguel positioned itself as the sophisticated alternative to standard lagers, but the only real difference is the marketing budget and the Spanish-sounding name. Traditional Spanish brewing, particularly in smaller cervecerías, produces lagers with genuine character using 100% barley malt and extended lagering periods. Iconic cans betray brewing. Here's Scotland's most famous lager and the reality behind those iconic pin-up cans. Tennent's contains up to 35% unmalted maize, which has been part of their recipe since they started producing lager in 1885, making them one of the earliest British adopters of this cost-cutting approach. The 4.0% ABV is achieved through rapid fermentation, lasting just 8 to 10 days, producing that characteristically bland, slightly sweet flavour that Scottish drinkers have accepted as standard for generations. What's particularly concerning is the use of caramel colouring to give it that golden appearance, because the adjunct grains don't produce the same natural colour that 100% barley malt would. They also add propylene glycol alginate for foam stabilisation, creating that artificial head that disappears quickly because there's insufficient protein from real malt. The famous Lager Lovelies marketing campaign from the 1960s to 1990s was brilliant distraction from what was actually in the can, using attractive women to sell what's essentially industrial beer production. Traditional Scottish brewing produced incredible ales with depth and character, but Tennent's helped establish Scotland's unfortunate reputation as a lager drinking nation. At £3 to £4 per pint in Scottish pubs, drinkers are paying for marketing heritage rather than brewing quality, and Scotland's excellent craft breweries now prove that proper beer made with 100% malt and traditional methods, is infinitely superior. £6 for British adjunct brew? Right, here's the Italian lager that convinced British drinkers to pay £6 per pint. Peroni contains approximately 25% maize, despite their marketing suggesting it's brewed according to traditional Italian methods using the finest ingredients. The 5.1% ABV comes from a fermentation process that takes about 12 days, significantly shorter than the month-long lagering that quality Italian breweries traditionally used. What makes this particularly misleading is how they've positioned it as a premium, sophisticated choice for discerning drinkers, when the recipe and production methods are fundamentally the same as mass-market lagers costing half the price. The version sold in Britain is actually brewed in Burton-upon-Trent by Molson Coors under licence, not in Italy, as the packaging implies with its Italian flag colours and Portofino imagery. They also use hop extracts rather than whole hops, and add tetrahop-based foam stabilisers to create that artificially persistent head. The narrow, elegant glass they serve it in is pure marketing theatre, designed to justify the premium pricing, but doing nothing for the actual drinking experience. Traditional Italian brewing, particularly in northern Italy's Lombardy and Veneto regions, produced lagers with genuine character using 100% malt and extended lagering in alpine caves. What you're paying £6 for at your local pizza restaurant is Italian branding applied to British industrial brewing, and that price premium is going towards sponsorship deals and marketing rather than quality ingredients. Heineken Twin with Green Skunk. Here's the Dutch lager that most British drinkers assume is premium quality. Amstel contains up to 35% unmalted cereals, primarily maize and wheat starch, creating that distinctively bland, slightly sweet flavour profile that characterises industrial lagers. The 4.1% ABV is achieved through rapid fermentation, using genetically selected yeast strains that prioritise speed and consistency over flavour complexity. What's particularly dodgy is how Amstel is owned by Heineken and shares much of the same production infrastructure, yet is marketed as a separate brand to capture different market segments and price points. They use the same hop extract technology as other Heineken products, meaning you're getting standardised bitterness without the aromatic complexity that whole hops provide. The green bottle looks premium, but actually allows light degradation of the beer, creating skunked off flavours that many drinkers have learned to accept as normal. They also add PVPP, polyvinyl polypyrrolidone, as a stabiliser, extending shelf life but introducing synthetic polymers into what should be a natural product. The association with Amsterdam and Dutch culture convinces British pubgoers they're drinking something authentic and European, but you're really just drinking another industrial adjunct lager. Traditional Dutch brewing, as practiced by smaller Dutch breweries, uses 100% barley malt and proper lagering techniques lasting 4 to 6 weeks, creating beers with actual depth and character rather than bland, inoffensive drinkability, optimised for mass consumption. German image, Belgian cheats. Now here's the German lager that's betrayed centuries of brewing tradition. Beck's contains approximately 30% rice and maize adjuncts, which is absolutely scandalous given Germany's Reinheitsgebot, beer purity law, that traditionally allowed only water, barley, hops and yeast in beer. The version sold in Britain is actually brewed in Belgium by AB InBev, not Germany, and doesn't follow the purity law because it's not sold in Germany, where those regulations still apply. The 4.0% ABV comes from a fermentation process lasting just 9 to 11 days, a fraction of the time traditional German lagering requires, and the result is that characteristically thin, unremarkable flavour. What makes this particularly offensive to brewing tradition is how Beck's markets itself using German heritage and quality associations, complete with the Bremen key on the label and suggestions of centuries-old brewing excellence. They use tetrahop extract for foam stability, rather than allowing natural proteins from 100% malt to create proper head retention. The green bottle allows light to damage the beer, yet they persist with it for brand recognition rather than quality considerations. Traditional German brewing represents the pinnacle of lager production, with strict ingredient requirements and extended lagering periods creating some of the world's finest beers. What Beck's offers British drinkers is German branding applied to Belgian industrial production using adjunct grains that would be illegal in Germany itself, charging £4 to £5 per pint for what's essentially a betrayal of everything German brewing stands for. It's marketing heritage without respecting tradition, and British drinkers paying premium prices deserve actual German quality rather than just German imagery. Asahi fakes Dutch windmills? Here's the Dutch lager famous for that swing-top bottle, but let's talk about what's inside. Grolsch brewed for the British market contains approximately 25% maize adjuncts, creating that slightly sweet, uncomplicated flavour profile that lacks the depth proper 100% malt brewing provides. The 4.0% ABV comes from a fermentation process optimised for consistency and speed rather than flavour development, taking about 10 days compared to the traditional 4 to 6 week lagering period. What's particularly misleading is how Grolsch has been owned by Japanese brewing giant Asahi since 2016, yet continues marketing itself as authentically Dutch with imagery of windmills and traditional Holland. The famous swing-top bottle is brilliant marketing, making drinkers feel they're accessing something traditional and special, when it's actually just a packaging gimmick that costs more to produce, and those costs are passed directly to you. They use hop extract technology rather than whole hops, standardising flavour across massive production runs, and removing the natural variation that makes craft brewing interesting. The UK version also contains additives as a preservative and foam stabilisers that traditional Dutch breweries would never use. During the 1980s and 1990s, Grolsch positioned itself as the premium Dutch import for sophisticated British drinkers, charging £5 to £6 per pint in pubs and significantly more in the distinctive bottle from off-licences. What you're actually drinking is industrial-scale production using cost-saving adjuncts and additives, with Dutch branding justifying prices that bear no relation to the quality of ingredients or brewing methods. Traditional Dutch brewing from smaller independent breweries creates lagers with genuine character using 100% barley malt and proper lagering, proving that national heritage means nothing if you abandon the methods that created that heritage in the first place. 50% grains alcohol stripped? Right, here's the ultimate insult to British beer drinkers. Carling C2 is marketed as a mid-strength lager at 2.8% ABV, supposedly for responsible drinking. But what they don't advertise is that it contains up to 50% unmalted cereals and uses advanced filtration to remove alcohol rather than brewing it properly to lower strength. This double processing means you're drinking beer that's been made, then had components removed, then had foam stabilisers and flavour enhancers added back to make it drinkable, creating something that's barely recognisable as beer by any traditional definition. The production process uses reverse osmosis to remove alcohol, the same technology used for desalination and industrial water treatment, which strips out flavour compounds along with the alcohol, requiring them to add back artificial flavouring and colouring to make it palatable. What makes this particularly cynical is the marketing suggesting this is somehow a healthier or more responsible choice, when you'd be far better off drinking less of a proper beer brewed with quality ingredients. They've also added vitamins and minerals in some versions, turning beer into a functional beverage, rather than respecting it as a traditional drink with thousands of years of cultural significance. The foam head is entirely artificial, created through specialised proteins and stabilisers, because there's insufficient malt protein to create natural head retention. At £3 to £4 per pint, you're paying nearly the same as proper beer for something that's more industrial science project than traditional brewing. The fact that Carling would put their name on this shows how far modern brewing has fallen from its roots. Traditional British brewing created session bitters at 3 to 4% ABV using 100% malt and proper brewing methods, proving you don't need to resort to alcohol removal and chemical additives to create lower strength drinks. This represents everything wrong with modern industrial brewing: cost optimization over quality, marketing over authenticity, and corporate efficiency over brewing tradition. British drinkers deserve transparency about what they're drinking, and C2 represents the opposite of transparency, hiding industrial processing behind health-washing marketing and heritage branding. Well, there you have it. 15 beers that aren't quite what they claim to be. From adjunct lagers masquerading as premium imports to industrial processing disguised as brewing tradition. Next time you're at the pub, maybe consider a proper British ale from an independent brewery, or at least know what you're actually paying for. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and click on the next video on your screen to learn more about what's really in your drinks. Cheers!